Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be switching some Alocasias over into Lechuza Pon. Lechuza Pon is my preferred substrate for Alocasias. If you've never worked with Lechuza Pon before, Lechuza Pon is a hydroponic way of growing your plants, and it is a combination of lava rock. I really like it. It's got fertilizer mixed in, so it's really awesome. Today I'm going to be switching over two of my Alocasias. We got my Alocasia cuprea that I just got from a plant store. It is growing in soil, so we're going to be moving that over. And then I also have a corm that I grew in some fluval stratum. It's a pink poly ghost, and I'm going to move that over to Lechuza Pon as well because the stratum it's in is pretty shallow. I didn't really intend for it to be in here for super long. It's doing pretty well, so I'm ready to switch it over into Lechuza Pon. So let's get going. I'm going to show you how I transfer my plants from one substrate into Lechuza Pon. The first thing you're always going to want to do is take it out of the soil it's in and completely clean off the roots. The soil's super wet, so it might be kind of hard to get it all off, but you want to be kind of fragile when doing this because you don't want to completely rip off all the roots, especially if your soil is really wet. If you try and rush through this and do it too quick, it'll just rip off all the roots. Okay, this is something you might run into if you've bought in a plant from a nursery or a big box store. This plug, this mesh plug, sometimes it's plasticky, sometimes it's mesh. I'm going to take it off. Personally, that's what I like to do. I like to take it off. There's a lot of mixed opinions about them. I personally have always experienced that it really is not very beneficial, but I just take it off. This Alocasia is probably still pretty young. It doesn't have any corms or anything like that, so also the root system just isn't, like, it's not awesome. I mean, it's not horrible, but like I said, I personally don't like the plugs. There's varying opinions on them. It is what it is. So I'm going to clean off my roots, and then I am going to wash these off, but I'm also going to take my polygos out of its medium as well and just wash them off together. So the root system on this guy is just little because this is one of the reasons I wanted to move him. I didn't put very much substrate in there. It was a very shallow amount, so there was nowhere for the roots to grow. It was just bottomed out. So that's why we're going to be moving it. So now let's go and rinse off our roots. This is the first and probably most important step when moving a plant to Lechuza Pon, because especially this one, because it was growing in soil. These are soil roots, not water roots, and they will most likely rot off and this will grow new roots. But if you leave any soil on these roots before transferring it, it's just going to get root rot and your plant's gonna die. So I just washed mine off in my kitchen sink with lukewarm water. You don't want it to be hot and you don't want it to be cold. So kind of like what you would prefer to wash your hands with. Lukewarm. Okay, once your roots are sufficiently cleaned off, like super clean. Look how clean they are. We are going to move them into our Lechuza Pon. So I am going to do a little bit of experimenting. Normally when I'm doing Lechuza Pon, I just use a self-watering pot that I buy off Amazon, or I sometimes use takeout containers like for soup, and I drill holes in the bottom of it, use that as my planter and put it in a water reservoir to make it self-watering. I'm curious because I found these pots that are technically for African violets at the store. They're porous, so it can absorb the water. So as an experiment for myself, I'm going to be putting my cuprea in here today with my Lechuza Pon. For Lechuza Pon, I fill up the bottom like fourth with the Lechuza, and then just like when you're planting a regular plant, you're just going to put your Alocasia. Honestly, this leaf, he's probably going to fall off, so I'm just going to take him off this baby leaf. And then just fill in around it. One of my favorite things about Lechuza Pon is how heavy it is. It really does a good job of holding the plant in place because it's so dense and heavy. It's one of my favorite parts about it. Okay, and so now this one just goes right in here. I'm obsessed with how that looks. I think it looks so good. And now we're just gonna do my pink poly. So this is really little. It's still just a really small guy. This little baby leaf, it's gonna die, so I'm just gonna peel it off. These leaves, this is really small. So for my really small hydroponics, I just use clear plastic cups. Mine are just Solo Cup brand from Walmart. And I just drill little holes in the bottom of them. So it's like a regular pot, it can be reused, but they work really well for me. They're very affordable. I love them. So for this guy, same thing. We're just gonna fill up the bottom fourth. Or in this case, maybe bottom half, because our root system is really small on this guy. And then we're just gonna take him, put him in here. And now we're just gonna fill the rest of it up with Lechuza. I'm like just getting by with barely enough. I will say Lechuza is a little hard to get your hands on these days. There's like a shortage of it. If you can find it, grab it. I'm always checking Amazon to see if I can order it. Always checking my local plant stores to see if they have any of it. And there is our pink poly planted in Lechuza. And then I literally just used the same cup for the reservoir for these small ones. My Alocasia pink poly, I'm not as worried about going into shock. So when you switch into Lechuza Pon, your plants might go into a little bit of shock because it's not what they're used to, especially if they're coming from soil. Plants from soil to Lechuza Pon or any kind of hydroponic go into a much deeper shock because water roots and soil roots are not the same. This Alocasia that I was growing in fluvial stratum, that's kind of similar to being hydroponic where it grows the same type of roots. I'm not as worried about this guy going into shock. Now this one, this came from soil, so it's not used hydroponics. When you move Alocasias into Lechuza Pon, they may go into a little bit of shock and they may start losing some leaves, or leaves may start turning yellow. Don't panic. If you lose a couple of leaves or a couple of leaves aren't looking the best, that's not cause for panic. It just is they're going through shock. They'll drop those leaves, they'll grow new ones, and they'll be happy. Because what's gonna happen is some of these main roots that were on here, they're gonna rot off, but it's gonna grow new roots. First, put your plant in Lechuza Pon. You're actually just gonna wanna water the top like a normal plant just to saturate the whole substrate. Because you wanna saturate the whole substrate this first time around, and honestly, I don't leave any water in my reservoir the first time I water my Lechuza Pon because I wanna give it a chance to be wet, completely dry out, and make sure those roots have time to adjust to their new growing medium. And then once the Lechuza Pon completely dries out and is good to go, then you can tell that the roots are working properly, and then you can start with filling up the reservoir and go from growing that way. When you move your plants, make sure you're checking on them every once in a while. If it seems like things are going really south, it's okay to take it out and check on them. Make sure you're not suffering any extreme rot, because that would not be good. But if it's just a little bit of unhappiness, a yellow leaf, one leaf falling too, don't panic, ride it out. This is how I grow my Alocasias in pon, and I will keep you guys updated. If you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Bye.